it's February 8th, and this is a special called meeting of the Human Services Committee. Thank you all for coming today. Our task is something that came out of a request through council and from our constituents to improve the language access here in Metro-wide. We don't have a specific plan in place, and so this committee has been tasked with coming up with a plan and an implementation policy to put in language access anywhere that we need it. A broader issue that has come to light in the preliminary research that I have done is that we need a Title VI compliance plan throughout Metro. We don't have one system-wide. Generally, language access would fall under the purview of Title VI. So as we figure out the best plan for language access, we also need to be thinking about a broader plan for Title VI. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get deeper into the meeting. Some of the things that we will need to decide as a committee and as we move forward will be where within Metro we think is most important that this is implemented. Translation obviously is on paper, translating from one language to another. Interpretation is verbal. It is translating spoken language. And obviously ASL is also translating spoken language into ASL, so we need to address all those issues. Plus, departmentally, documents that are within each department that would be vital to someone being able to access the full services of Metro, to understand those services and to access those services. So we need to make sure that those vital documents are also available to people who are not English readers or speakers. So it's a pretty broad task, but we can do this. The first thing that I want to do is bring up Fabian Bedney from the mayor's office. Fabian has been, has kind of stepped in for Mohammed Shukri, who is out as a new dad. Mohammed has been working on this plan from one angle within the mayor's office, and Fabian is going to give us just a little brief update as to where that stands right now. Fabian, let me just figure out which microphone you're on. Who is he? Admin? There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to come and share with the committee. So yes, Mohammed Shukri is a brand new dad. We're very proud, very excited for him. I remember when I had my first kid, so it's a special moment. So he's taking some time off to look after his wife and the kid, and he asked me before he left that to please follow up on his work. He was very interested in this, and so we are all in the mayor's office. So when I took the file that he gave me, my first intention was to find what the problems are, like get a better sense of what the issues are that people face as they are engaging with the city. So I reached out to the disability people. I reached out to Conexión, to Turk. I reached out to some of you council members. My goal is to get, I reached out to the Tennessee Latin American Chamber of Commerce. And I'm interested in hearing from as many people that face issues or barriers as they try to engage with the city. That way we can find a solution that solves a problem and not create a solution that is looking for a problem, right? I mean, we really first need to find or ascertain with clarity what are the barriers people find, and then go on to solve them. I know that we are committed to do that, and so that's why I'm here. And here I'm today just asking every council member to reach out to me in the mayor's office and let me know if you're aware of any of your constituents that have faced any issues engaging with the city from a point of view of accessibility, language, people that have disabilities or language barriers or so forth. Because when we have anybody in the city that can be successful, it hurts everybody in the city. So we want everybody to be successful.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Fabian about happenings in the mayor's office under this purview? No. Thank you, Fabienne. I appreciate you coming out today. Fortunately, a lot of this work has already been done. The Metro Human Relations Commission, you all have on your desk the language access guidebook and toolkit, and the report that they did in 2016 and 2017. They actually did quite a bit of community outreach, speaking with community groups, speaking with department heads, holding focus groups, speaking about many of the issues that Fabienne is there and Mohammed are picking up the threads on. And they have some very good documentation about the problems that people have been running into and what they saw as ways to address this issue. They also, under the former head of the Metro Human Relations Commission, Mel Fowler-Green, they developed a survey that they sent around system-wide to all departments within the system, talking about what happened within the departments, what they see as problems, what they have in place in terms of providing language access. And one of the really exciting things that there are many departments within Metro that actually have very good systems in place, particularly when it comes to language access. That includes public health, the juvenile court, Metro Public Library. So I think one of the tasks of this committee will be to go out and speak and engage with each of these departments within Metro to look at and examine how they have handled that, what they do, what's been successful, what has not been successful, and then determine what we can actually reproduce on a system-wide level, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. I mentioned about Title VI compliance. We do need to get a compliance plan. Most cities have compliance plans in place because any department that receives federal dollars has to have a compliance plan in place and has to provide reports on how they are keeping in compliance. Currently under Metro, the head of the Metro Human Relations Commission is designated as the Title VI officer. But unfortunately, in that position, they have no legal authority and they cannot require departments to do anything under that title. So right now, we don't really have a clear line of responsibility to anyone in Metro government who actually oversees all of Title VI. Councilmember Benedict?
Thank you, Chair. Just quick question. Does that put us at risk of not receiving federal funding today for anything?
I think potentially it could. I think that is something that goes to the Department of Justice. I think it's more likely that someone could potentially file a complaint if they have run into a language access problem, and then the DOJ would come to us and see what we're doing are we in compliance and what steps are we taking to get back into compliance. I know there have been many departments throughout who don't feel like they would be subject to Title VI because only departments that get federal funding are subject to Title VI. But given that ARP funds are federal money and that's pretty much going system-wide, I believe at this point every department would, in fact, fall under the purview of having to maintain Title VI compliance. So obviously the Metro Council cannot, we cannot codify standard operating procedures for any department. That's outside of our purview, but we could codify a plan that would require departments to be within compliance and have that information made public, and also to have a viable and feasible language access program in place within the department. As you can see, if you read this report, the Human Relations Commission did a lot of the legwork that we would be doing. Just even surveying the departments is very, very helpful, and we can pick up on some of those threads. I also spoke earlier, and I was hoping that he would be here today to address us. I also spoke with Slade Hurd from IT about what is already going on. And one of the things is we do have a contract with a company in Atlanta that, like, for example, translated Hub for us. And Hub is actually translated. You have the option of getting Hub translated into 5 languages. There's a little widget on the Hub page, which I have to be honest, I had never even noticed. But you can have Hub translated into Spanish, Kurdish, French, Mandarin, and Arabic. Slade said that they don't feel like that widget has been used much since it was implemented. And that's just something they've come up with kind of anecdotally, because generally, he said that when things are translated, they get, well, for lack of a better term, complaints about someone will say, that is not translated well. I think maybe you should translate that better. That's not really explaining in a way that we understand, and this, and they haven't really gotten any feedback that things are translated incorrectly. They just haven't gotten any feedback about the translations at all. So that is leading them to wonder how much that is accessed. My question to that was how many people actually understood that widget was there, because I use Hub all the time and I did not know that that widget was there. So perhaps that's another thing that we need to be tasked with, is raising awareness of what is already out there in Metro. We had at the Budget and Finance meeting, the former head of the Metro Human Relations Commission, Mel Fowler-Green, spoke, and she said that under Title VI, there are there are degrees under which certain things are not required to have language access, like, for example, like translation services. And based on those numbers, she believed that Metro would only be required to have things translated into Spanish based on the numbering system and how the DOJ and Title VI demands it. But we would want to look into that too and do a little more research to make sure. As we know, there are 6 main languages spoken within Metro, and we would like to make sure that all the people within Metro who wish to access with Metro, more than we interact with them, like in terms of like property taxes and those kind of things, when we are actually sending out notifications. When they want to come to Metro and access some of the Metro services, we want to make sure that they can actually do that as seamlessly as possible. So basically, there's just a lot of tasks. This is really going to, as I say, I'm very, very grateful to the Human Relations Commission for already having done a lot of this legwork that we can build on. We also know that Hannah Zeitland in the council office had also done some pricing work about systems that we might be able to access and contract with in Metro. However, reading this document from the Human Relations Commission, they detail out many of the contracts that we already have that are accessible to each and every department, including over-the-phone translation and translation of documents. And so some of the research that we'll need to do will be figuring out which department owns those contracts, which department oversees those contracts, see how often they're accessed, see how affordable they are, see how, make sure that each department knows that those things are there. I mean, obviously, this is a very, very big task, so the first thing we need to do is come up with a plan and a time frame, and then figure out how much that'll cost system-wide, and then how we can come up with legislatively with something that codifies the creation of Title VI office and requiring departments to make sure they're up to Title VI compliance. There's also other good resources within the state. They have a very good Title VI compliance officer. We can actually try to build on that. But today really needs to be kind of a brainstorming session for us all, if we can do it. Obviously, there's not, this is specially called meeting on a relatively short time frame, so there's not, a lot of us are not here today, so we'll need to be picking up this thread. But now that we have these reports, I can send out some other information that I've gathered, and we can start, having another meeting to brainstorm. So does anybody have any questions about what our actual task is, what the broad overview is, what our mission is? Councilmember Benedict?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not, I just Googled Title VI, and I like to compare us to Denver because we're similar in size to metropolitan government. And I found from Googling that for the city and county of Denver, they have a Title VI policy and plan that's 3 pages long. But then if you follow other links on that Google search, their Department of Transportation has one, and so each department has a very comprehensive person. So I guess what I'm curious about, the idea of a Title VI office, like would that, I'm curious about that idea. I think that, would that reside like in the administration? And then over, or would it go underneath HR, kind of trying to figure out where this would belong. Just to, again, I know we're brainstorming, so I'm just throwing some stuff at the wall here.
Right. Well, I think where that position would reside would be something that we would have to talk about. Currently, Title VI does reside with HR. They collect all the reports that come in from all the different departments within Metro when they file their Title VI reports and things. But no one is really tasked within Metro with the power to like audit and to interpret that data. In many departments, it's more of a figurehead. Someone has one job, and then they are said, you are also also in charge of Title VI compliance. And so we would need to, that's one of the things that we would have to come up with legislatively to create an office and then figure out where that office would live and task that person with that authority to gather that data, interpret that data, audit that data, so that we make sure that we're in compliance system-wide. So that's something we're going to have to.
Well, maybe the Metro Human Relations Commission would be a better place. I'm not sure, right?
The Metro Human Relations Commission would be very good because that would fall under their purview and mission. And as I said, right now, the designated Title VI officer within Metro is the head of the MRHC, but they don't really have any authority to do anything with that beyond the figurehead position. No. Let's see, C.M. Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me. In talking about Title VI and where I guess a compliance officer would be kind of the working title or whatever for such a position, either the Human Relations or within Metro HR. But one of the things that I wanted to point out when looking at that, would we also consider including ADA in that same position so that it was working on compliance for both Title VI and ADA?
I think that would be a very, very good idea to do that because Title VI is all about discrimination against, race, creed, all those kind of things. And I think that it's a very broad umbrella. And so I think ADA would fall under that. And I think that could also streamline the process. And so we're not duplicating services throughout Metro.
And I think that's a good way to look at it because we don't want to duplicate. And then also when we're talking about Title VI and how it relates to language and interpretation on the ADA side, we also have interpretation in terms of sign language for the hearing impaired. And so I think that it's a good fit to have all of that together under one umbrella.
Yeah, I agree. Because we don't. This, again, is one of the reasons I'm so grateful to find these documents from the Metro Human Relations Commission. And C.M. Druffel, I don't know if it's on your desk, but there's copies up here if you wanted to grab some. But these reports are found on the Human Relations Commission website under publications. And they also have some other reports about other great work that they have done. This includes a toolkit, and within this toolkit is actually the survey that they came up with that they send out to each department, that each department can use to make sure that, to gather the data about how well they are in compliance with Title VI. But again, none of that is formalized and codified, and so we just need to get all those things together so it kind of runs of its own weight, if that makes sense, So some of the starting points for this, to my mind, and we can talk about this, would be for us to look at peer cities like CM Benedict was just doing and see what they are doing in terms of Title VI compliance and where their programs live and who is in charge. And also getting into some of the departments here who already do. We can look at language access as it's under Title VI, but we can also look at it as a separate thing. It generally lives under Title VI in the broadest sense, but we can work on these two things concurrently and then marry them at the end. Because if we can get language access in place relatively quickly, I think that would be a good way to proceed, because obviously it's going to take a little more work legislatively to come up with something with Title VI to really figure out what we want that to look like and figure that out and then get legislation passed and get that in place and get that funded and those kind of things. But the language the language access, much of this again might be based on what the MRHC has already done. It might simply be making an awareness campaign about what is required in each department and what we want to do ultimately with the goal. So we really need to kind of dive into that and see, and read this report in depth to see what these departments are doing. But if we can task someone to talk to public health, whoever is in charge of Title VI with public health and language access, if we can task somebody to go talk to the juvenile court and what they are doing for Title VI and language access, and someone to talk to the Metro Public Library on the same things. These three departments have a very good reputation and are doing this very well and providing these services very well. So we need to see how their programs developed, and what they have seen in terms of how people use their systems and how they access those systems, and then again, see what we can reproduce and what can be reproduced on the whole metro-wide level.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be glad to coordinate conversations with all three of those groups. I've got great relationships with all three, so
That
I
would
think
be
that I'll be able to
perfect.
gather what we need to gather from that.
That is you. CM Benedict has taken on that task. Does someone want to take on the task of examining some peer cities? Maybe Charlotte, Denver, and one other peer city of your choice to see what they are doing with Title VI? I know everybody's extremely busy. Wait, don't all jump up at once. Come on. Don't fight over this. Okay, I will assign that to CM Stiles, who could not be with us today, but said she was willing to do some research if we needed research done. So CM Stiles will do some research into peer cities. We also... Oh, hold on, CM Druffel, let me find you there. There you go.
I chair that and or second that. And in about 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be a little bit more freed up. I started the semester. I'm a little busy right now, but I don't want to sound like I can't do much, but give me a couple of weeks, okay?
Famous last words.
Yeah, then hopefully
know
you'll
what's
forget,
gonna
right? No,
come in,
thanks.
right. Another bit of research that we should do, and maybe Fabienne can explain how we can do this, is we need to figure out where some of these contracts live. I know that Slade Hurd was talking about a contract with a company called linguists who do a lot of the translation and are available to do page-by-page translation, but we don't know where a lot of these contracts actually live and who has them so that we can review those contracts. So maybe if you could explain to me how we go about tracking down those contracts and where they actually live, what department, that would help so that we can look to see what's actually in place, and perhaps get some data. I do know that most of these programs on contracts that we have are all on a per use basis, like the translation is like either per word or per page. So we just have contracts in place, which allows us to access them when needed, but the costs, you can't really, it's very difficult to come up with what an actual cost is going to be to budget for, because we just don't know how much people are actually, which departments are accessing it and how regularly people are accessing it. CM Benedict?
Thank you. One quick question. Is this, the smaller of the two, is this also from the same time period? It's not dated, is it February 17th?
They are, yeah,
together?
16 and 17 when they were doing the research and put out the thing. So,
I hadn't
yeah.
asked that. So I think the other thing that I, relative to what you were just talking about, will come back to me. Boy, that happens a lot.
Oh, the brain?
Yeah,
The brain just went?
older I get.
So CM Stiles will take care of the peer cities. You will take care of the departments within Metro. Fabienne Bedney will help us figure out how we track down those contracts and see where that goes. So then I would just throw this out. Are there other things that I've missed so far that you think are important? I know many of the documents within Metro are already translated and are available in various departments. We need to figure out the feasibility. How do we determine which meetings within Metro we need to make sure have live interpretation and things? Should it be every meeting in Metro? Is that overly broad and an impossible thing to do? Do we access... We just need to make those decisions of what we think are the most accessed and meetings that are most important to people. And I guess even if we're going to end up eventually providing that service for every meeting potentially, we should start with the most important ones and work our way down so that we can give, for example, more immediate access to people here in, say, council, people who want to come and participate in a council meeting, who want to come to a public hearing, so that we have those services available on a regular basis. So I just throw that out if people have other ideas about things that I might be missing as we take this first broad overview of where we need to go. CM Benedict?
I wish I could see the people behind me and know if they also are ready to talk or if it's just me. So my question was closed captions, like on MNN. I don't even know if we're doing anything about that. You know, it's a live feed, right? So if I'm talking right now and it's a recording, does the recording then have language options, closed caption options, period, just in English, let alone, you know, I mean, like in the language that we're all speaking on the floor, let alone any other languages that potentially could be translated. I don't know from a broadcast perspective what that would look like, but I think that might be something at a minimum we should look at. And maybe there's a need, maybe there's not a need, I don't know. But
I think there's a benefit myself to being able to see a meeting translated in real time so that you can participate in real time and not have to wait to see it afterwards when you see it on YouTube and, you know, all that. I think there's a benefit to feel like you are involved right then. And then you can, say, text your council person on the council floor and say, I have a question about this. Can you ask this question for me? So it's not after the fact. I mean, everyone's here and we're available. So that's another thing to look into, whether or not those are live caption feeds. Other ideas, things you feel like we might have missed? CM Hauser?
First, I apologize for being late. I had it at 4:30 on my calendar. When you're saying we need to look into this and we need to look into that, specifically, who is doing that? Is it a specific department within Metro that's going to be evaluating, or where is that responsibility going to lie?
Well, actually, right now, it lies with this committee for us to look in and come up with a plan for how we can actually come up with a Metro-wide plan for language access and a Metro-wide Title VI compliance plan. So it rests with us first. A lot of the data, the research that would have been one of the first things I would have had us do as a committee, the Metro Human Relations Commission has already done. They did the surveys back in 2017. They have all that data compiled here. We can see exactly what departments are doing, what they aren't doing, and we can see what our constituents throughout Nashville said in focus groups, in community groups, in surveys, all the things that the Human Relations Commission did to find out the barriers that people are running into. And so we can use that as our basis to look more broadly, Yeah. This is some great work, and the toolkit is also great. And I know this is something that the Human Relations Commission, I know under Mel Fowler-Green, had wanted to be doing for a long time, and just it was difficult to get this off the ground. Again, we don't really know where a lot of this stuff lives, and we need to know where it lives. So we just want to pick up that thread and see if we can keep this under the purview of the Metro Human Relations Commission, as they have the resources to continue this kind of research and make sure we're actually meeting our goal and our mission.
And I know at our last meeting, we said that Spanish rose to the level that it would be a language that would be included. Do we know what the criteria is? Number of people in the population, or what? It may be, if you may be able to answer this, what's the criteria for a language to rise to the point that we say we need to have an interpreter for that language?
Oh, sorry. You are on, I think.
Oh, thank you, Council Member. When I spoke before, I was trying to explain that we are really going about it from a customer experience point of view and not so much from a department point of view. We want to know from the people that want to interact with the city and are unable to do it for whatever reason. And we want to improve that experience to where they can actually integrate and work better with the city and get the type of services the city can offer. I believe the report, like Councilmember Welsh indicated, if you read the reports you get every year when they submit the budget request for the operating budget, you will see that they submit to you a report that shows what they have been doing in terms of Title VI. We're going a different route. We want to know who are the people that are frustrated and want to be able to benefit from the city. People with disabilities, people, like Councilmember Rutherford said, people that may have some unable to see or to hear. And we want to, once we have all the data from the customer, I'm using the word customer loosely, the residents, so we can actually address specifically that from an operational point of view. So we are very committed to that, but we need your help. You have a lot of anecdotal evidence as you talk to your constituents and they get frustrated that they wanted X, Y, or Z and they just couldn't, it wouldn't work for them. So if you want to share that with me, I'm very thankful to follow up with the information. I hope I answered the question.
And
Did
just-
he answer your question?
He did, and there's just one more thing, and then I'll be quiet for a moment. Okay, we have all these wonderful screens in our chambers that tell people what bill we're on. It would seem that either these screens or some additional ones could be running a closed caption, and one in English and another one in Spanish or something. So if people are sitting here in the audience, even if someone's not speaking their language, they can see it. So that would be one of my suggestions. And I would think that if we are having interpreters, that may actually be an easier thing for them to keep up with than saying it, and having people wear earphones to be able to hear that language. If they could see it, that might be another alternative.
I think that's an excellent idea. And this kind of then points to that we as a committee need to be thinking about, we're coming up to budget season, we need to be thinking and trying to put a cost to this so that we can start making budget requests this cycle so that we can get this in place. And if you would like to take on that task, CM Hauser, we would love for you to do that. If you would like to figure out what that might cost.
I will agree to talk with our technical folks to see where to even get started on that, because I had the idea, but I don't know what it means. But I will take on, and you can put my name down for talking with our technical folks to get some direction on looking at that.
Great. And then to see what would be required to do that.
Right,
And then,
because I have no idea. I'm not the techie guy, but we have some wonderful techie guys, and I use guys as non-gender because I'm from the north originally. But yeah, I'll take on researching that and seeing what we need, because I think that might be something that even somebody off-site could be typing in a language so that people could see what's being said in Spanish or whatever other languages we feel rise to the level that we need to present.
great. And I think it might be worth looking to see if we can just get an ongoing contract perhaps with some, with nonprofits who might be able to provide some of those services, provided those people are qualified to provide those services. That is another big issue with language access. In many departments sometimes, and I'm not necessarily saying just here in Metro, but with a lot of times people within the department will simply ask somebody within that department who speaks a particular language to act as a translator, and you really do need qualified people to translate, especially if there are sensitive issues and things. It can't just be willy-nilly. You have to know what you're talking about and make sure that you're clearly translating and actually getting the correct ideas across. So far, everyone has a task except for CM Druffel, but he said he can take one on in 3 weeks. So we're going to hold him to that. Once again, is there, CM Rutherford? You're on.
Madam Chair, you said everyone has a task except for CM Druffel. I don't believe I have one. Or did I miss something?
Oh, that's right.
I'll pass my next one.
Oh, okay. What can we get CM Rutherford?
I'm glad to help in any way I can, but I'm good either way.
Actually, CM Rutherford, if you could find out what those levels are within Title VI that springs that pushes the trigger that you have to start providing those services, that would be great. If we could get a better understanding of what triggers our having to provide services so that we at least have a baseline. I mean, I think that ultimately we would like to provide as much interpretation in the 6 most spoken languages in Metro, but it would be good to know in the beginning what exactly it is that we are required to provide, and make sure that those are in place, and then we can build on that. And beyond even, yeah, if you could give us all the basics of Title VI, what we need to look for in terms of requirements that is going to trigger requirements for us. I got a thumbs up. So now it's only CM Druffel. But we'll get you, Tom. We will get you.
But not least,
Does anybody else, are we missing anything? Does anybody else have any ideas, thoughts? CM Druffel, you are on.
how often are we going to meet, and what's the format going forward?
I think that's something we could decide right now if you'd like to do that, how often you'd like to meet. We also have our other task that we are taking on as the committee, which is involving homelessness. And so we'll need to be having meetings outside of a normal council meeting times for that also. This has, for this in terms of what the vice mayor requested of us, is slightly more urgent in terms of wanting to get this rolling very, very quickly, which I think we've done already just with this meeting today and everyone being tasked. But we'll need to have meetings for that also, unless you all want to have work groups that we have longer meetings. We address both issues. But so that's something we can discuss now if people have preferences.
Maybe we just do a poll after each meeting we have every other week, so we can get a sense of, I know my schedule changes all the time, so I just sort of,
Right,
that's just me.
right. How much flexibility do any of you all have for like meetings, like our meeting on today, on an off Tuesday at 4 o'clock? Is that not a good time, a good time? Later would be better? And earlier is better for Emily. No more. We need our beauty sleep. No early morning meetings. Well, is everyone okay with the idea of at least meeting every other week? And do we want to, did you have something, CM Druffel?
Sometimes I teach a lot at nights, and so this is usually one of my only nights that I can't. So it gets a little bit tricky because I have to prepare for, I have 5 classes I'm teaching this semester plus 3 I'm designing. So it's a little tricky. I just wanted to be upfront that my week off of council is very tight generally. Not to create excuses, it's just I have 8 classes for the entire semester. We have 7-week classes. So anyhow, just to give you a sense of if I miss something, I not on purpose.
Would people prefer to meet on council weeks to get all your meetings out in one week?
Yeah, for me, Chair, it would be easier for me just because I'm already committed to that. That's just on my personal side.
Okay.
My thoughts, Chair, are Mondays as the last, after the last committee meeting on Mondays, because some of us go to those meetings. It's planning and budget and finance and affordable housing that day. And so if we're doing this special committee for a short while, and it's not into perpetuity, right? So.
No, we hope not.
Yeah, right. So for a few months.
I think we can come up with a plan
I hope so.
this century.
Right. I'm sure we can. But I don't know, just a thought that, I like the idea of doing it during council week, but also doing it on a time that we're already here.
Okay. CM Rutherford, everyone's mic is on, so you're good.
Just a question in regard to Councilmember Benedict's comment about if we meet on a already predetermined council day, so like Monday, committee day, Tuesday, council day, then would we be actually a special called meeting, or wouldn't we just call that our regular committee meeting and do this and our business?
I requested that we be able to meet every council week, and I was told officially that we couldn't do that, especially going into budget season. There just wasn't enough time that the vice mayor preferred if we had specially called meetings on other nights of the week. I don't think that after regularly scheduled committee meetings, that would be a problem necessarily. The only potential problem with that could be that you never know how long budget's going to go. So if budget goes for, 3 hours, that could potentially, present a problem. I can't hear you, sorry.
Could we say a different meeting room? So let's say that we make it at 6 o'clock on Mondays of council week in committee room 2 or something, so, and then also still have and so this is for the special work is what I had in mind for the Monday.
Right.
But then our still normal committee work for whatever's on the agenda at whatever normal committee time is usually Tuesdays, right?
Yeah.
But I guess, then again, if the vice mayor's advice is, I don't know. So my thought there was if we're going to do it on the Monday of council week, maybe 6 p.m. in a different room or something like that, or I don't know what time, 5:30, whatever it might be. But I also see the pains coming up in budget season and
Right.
the scheduling pains that, not the budget itself is a pain, but the pain with scheduling.
Right.
I'll leave that open for somebody else to.
So then one last question would be, if we can't do that on a Monday night or during a council week, is there a better night of the week for people than Tuesday, if this is a difficult night for people? Not Friday? I was thinking Friday would be just the perfect day, No. That good. Does anyone have any preference for other nights or whatever? Okay, Tom is stuck. All right. I might just put out a Google form and see when people are most available, and we can figure it out. I mean, obviously, the entire committee may not be able to meet together every time, kind of like tonight, we're missing 3 people, but as many people as we can get working on it would be great. So does anybody else have any questions, any concerns, anything that we've missed? Okay, we are all tasked with our work. I will see if we can get something on the calendar for perhaps, Tom, did you say next week would be good? Like council week would be good for you or wouldn't be good for you? Okay. I will see if we can agree on an evening, one evening next week where we can come back, if people can kind of jump as much as they can and start pulling together all the research stuff so that we can begin to get a bit of an outline of what the plan will be. I'm hoping to have Shannon Hall from Human Resources, where Title VI right now currently lives, come and just tell us what that is, what she sees, problems that they have, how that works and how that's structured right now with Human Resources. So when we figure out legislatively how we want to do this, if that's what we decide to do, we have some good background on which department and which area within Metro would be best to house this and actually get this done. So any other questions, concerns?
I just wanted to thank you all for your interest in this very important issue and renew my call for feedback. If you talk to your constituents, and even if you have issues that you want to share with me, I will be happy to hear them at the next meeting or individually if you want to reach out to me. We at the mayor's office are very interested in addressing this issue.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we are out. See, Benedict.
Sorry, would it be beneficial at one of our special committee meetings, again, just spitball and brainstorming here, and I don't know if we want to do this or not, but potentially listen to members of the community, kind of almost a hearing of sorts of, maybe 2 or 3 community members that might be able to help us. And again, I'm just thinking of actually who those customers are who need help navigating our government. Maybe, I don't know, I like to hear from the public. I think you agree, we want to hear from the public and make sure that what the policy we're creating is useful for the public. We all believe it is, but I'm curious if that's something,
Right.
I mean, I don't know, just not necessarily necessary, because if it's going to be legislative, there may be a public hearing with that anyway. But I'm just thinking, all right, never mind. We'll just, again, spitballing, just throwing ideas around. Thank you, Chair.
Sam Dreffel, you're welcome.
this is where I might be added value. Lisa McMillan, a friend of mine, she runs the Kennedy Center for Disabilities. And so she would be a great technical expert. And I could. track
You're
her down.
tasked with that.
I'm tasked with that. I got a
I'm
task.
sorry, you're not waiting for the 2 weeks.
We'll just need to get her some time to know when.
Great, great. CM
Yeah, what
Hauser?
about, have we made any reach out to Turk or any of the other, you have, okay. And then also someone that you probably know, Marcela Gomez, who has been in Nashville for many years, does a lot in the Hispanic community, and really seems to understand communication and reaching a market. Would it be, I would be glad to reach out to her if someone else hasn't already.
Yeah, Marcela and I go way back. She lives in New York now.
Oh,
so,
no, I didn't know she had left.
No, it's good. She's also very committed to Nashville. But I talked to Jessie, who runs the Tennessee Latin America Chamber of Commerce, actually today, and she's going to help me with a survey to business people in the community. But like I said, we're interested beyond Latinos. We're interested in other groups and people with disabilities. So thank you, Councilmember Draffel, for your suggestion.
And that leads me, again, if you read this report, a lot of what we're talking about in terms of the community engagement and surveys and working with the community organizations, including Turk, those surveys were done by the Human Relations Commission, and so they do have some really good data in here. So if you want to read this report and we can see what other data we think we need going forward, we could do surveys and things geared towards that. But they've got some really pretty broad-based information here in their report. So. All right, well, if there is no other questions or comments, thank you all for being here today. It's a big task, but we can do this. And I will let you know when the next meeting is. I'll send out a Google form so we can come up with the best night for everybody. And thank you all for being so enthusiastic and taking on your tasks. I appreciate it. Thanks.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.